All right, guys, time out. I don't know how we've even gotten to this point. I haven't the foggiest idea how we've even gotten to this point, but let's do our best to try to clear this up right now. Okay? MMA fighters going to boxing and taking on boxers is not an idea that has worked. Just so you understand. So, not just from a competitive standpoint, not only are we 0-2, that not at all what I'm talking about. When I talk about it work, I'm not at all talking about that. I'm talking about financially, talking about being viable, talking about from a business perspective. This is a misconception done by you. And you alone. You have this cross to bear. So when you have other MMA fighters, right, and this is how it works. It's monkey see, monkey do. I'm just as guilty, right? I was a young man at one point. I looked up to guys. I had goals, whether I saw them on TV or I saw them on magazines, or maybe I heard my dad and my uncles talking about them. I just overheard this and I knew that this is the direction I wanted to go. We all understand those things. But you see somebody with success, so then you try to copy it. The success of MMA fighters taking on boxers is mythical. It is not true. I don't know how to make that clearer for you, and I'm attempting to make that clear for you because nobody disagrees that there is not a history of success or even a reasonable forward-moving demand to do it in reverse, to have the boxer come over to MMA. It gets dismissed quickly. Well, boxers are used to making more money. Contracts in boxing are more seductive. That's why I'm willing to do it, and that's why they wouldn't come over and be willing to do this. I understand you hang your hat on that, and if you make it to the highest echelon, you even have a fair point. But that's not why that conversation doesn't happen. It is accepted. It is believed to be proven law that boxers coming to MMA, no matter how good, doesn't matter if it's James Toney, doesn't matter if it's Clarissa Shields, and these are great fighters. I would not disrespect them, but it doesn't matter. You can make it kickboxers of Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya, so it's not about competition. Those guys come over and they could beat everybody. Them coming over was not a good night of business. It was something you had to build. It wasn't on its face. So then you have MMA guys that believe I can go to boxing because they believe that it's a success. They write it's monkey see, monkey do. They saw someone else do it. They want to go out and copy it. They're seeing it wrong. What you were told about the numbers between Floyd and Conor, I mean, just to start at the beginning, because there's only two, right? But what you were told about the numbers is fiction. You think you know the numbers of that fight. You know everything about the numbers of the fight. Unless I asked you an extremely basic question. Who wrote the check? Now, when somebody at Top Rank has a fight and it gets published, you know who wrote the check. Just by example. Somebody at Don King Promotions, when somebody at the WWE, when somebody at Bellator, when somebody at the UFC, when it's somebody at one championship, you know who wrote the check. It's a very basic question. It's not a trick question. It was done in Nevada, the fight capital of the world. It's public information. I'm asking you, since you continue to come and act as though you're an expert and act as though you're the next one that can copy the model, you know so much about it, then tell me one of the most basic questions. I'll ask you a third time. Who wrote the check? And now that you realize you don't quite know as much as you think you did, I will ask you why they didn't do a rematch. Both guys wanted it. Both guys are so thirsty that when you couldn't get it together because the promoter finally told Conor and Floyd, absolutely not am I taking that beating again. You had Floyd going over and doing other things, God bless him, and you have Conor on a hot pursuit of Manny Pacquiao. Floyd versus Conor was very big at that time. Simultaneous two-division champion, 49-0, going for number 50. It's going to be his retirement. Like everything was together, and it failed. Manny Pacquiao and Conor is not remotely the same conversation as Floyd versus Conor, which failed. So now I bring you to Fury and Ngannou, which for your ego. Oh, who wouldn't love to be in Francis's spot, right? Oh, your family, they'd be so proud of you. You'd be proud of yourself. You were coaches. You could celebrate. You told the world. You showed the world. You inspired the world. there a bigger thing you'd like to do in life, by the way? I mean, that'd be a tough one, right? More than anything in life, you'd like to be rich. This is just what you've told yourself since you're a little kid. Maybe as you get older, you see there's more to life. Since you're a little kid, right? Genie pops out of the bottle. What are you going to ask for? It always has to do with money. Every kid, every time, every gender, any way that you want to do it, any nation in the world. One thing we all got in common has to do with money. Well, what if I told you I could give you that? Or that genie comes out of a bottle and he can give you one other thing and you got to choose, and it's for you to be an inspiration to the world. Oh my God, what a compliment. Francis Ngannou inspired the world. It's a really interesting thing. There's a lot of, it's a really great thing. I could see where you'd be attracted, why you'd want to do that, why you'd want to pursue that, why you saw him and you want to follow him. I understand all of those things, but before we get there, you think there's a financial element. That fight bombed. That fight bombed. There was a number of reasons that you could look at. But it's very relevant that you understand that, because all of these MMA guys that are choosing and they're pursuing and they're trying to go to boxing, they're not doing it from a competitive standpoint. They're not doing it to win or be the WBA or IBF or IBO or whatever acronym some dork made up and got to those aren't reputable and respected things. That's all about the money. They're not doing it for the accomplishment. If they did, they could go sign up right now. They don't need anybody's opinion. They don't need to go out and get the mandate of the masses. If it wasn't about money, they don't need to do that. The Paris Olympics are 1 year away. Anybody with a pulse can sign up for the amateurs. Anybody. It's not even true for the professionals. You're going to have to do blood work and eye exams and MRIs and CTs. It is not like that for amateurs. Anybody could sign up. So it was about the competition. I mean, I'm just proving to you it's not about the competition. It's never been about that. I don't have a problem with that. I'm just proving that that's what it's about. It's about the money. There isn't the money that you think. A fool and his money will soon part. These boxing events exist on that premise. That's the only thing that keeps them alive. You have 3 viable players on Earth. At the height of Earth, you had 5 at the same time. It's down to 3. Everybody else that comes in is a fool who will soon part with his money, but he's willing to take the loss to be in the tough guy business for a few days. It's okay. It's just I'm sharing with you what it is. So when you have these MMA fighters that are constantly pursuing these boxing matches, and you think you're in talks and you think you're in discussions, you don't even know the laws and the rules that pertain to that sport. You don't even know the barriers of entry that are going to stop that from happening unless geographically you get to somewhere sovereign. You don't even know what it is that you're saying. So sure, those conversations are real easy. They're really, someday, let's get you a couple more years. Someday you could be the next. The next for what? The next to cost someone a bunch of money? The next to get beat, but you got beat less handily than we thought? Like, what is it that you've seen in the past that you think is going to work? And why is it the boxers have figured it out? Why is it that is it because in 1993 when we set this cage up, we showed that you got to have a grappling art to be able to fight? Maybe. It might be as simple as that. Or you have the perceived dum-dums in the room that are smarter than the guys that are perceived to be less dumb. Stop with the fake narrative that if you do well enough in MMA and you build your brand and everything's just right, maybe, just maybe you can get over to boxing. That's what you wanted to do. Paris is coming up. The process is about to. So maybe you don't want to do. Maybe you don't want to go the amateur route. I'm just sure. Maybe you don't. You want the big payday. Like anything in life, before you go and reinvent the wheel, find somebody that's done it and go and copy them. You're not going to be able to copy somebody that had success doing that. You will have fainted success. Making money and getting money, these are very different things, right? But once we start playing that game, now we're talking about just going and sitting down at the roulette wheel. You got some guy that didn't put a 401k together, or any kind of retirement or real estate, any kind of package for himself, but he went down and he won a scratch off. You go, that's what I'm going to do, right? If we're playing that game and we're not being responsible, okay, fine. Some of the merit to what I said, of course, goes away. But if you want to talk about historically being accurate, whether it was the one other time it happened or the most recent time that it happened, both of which were special spectacles, no denying it. But if you're doing that because you think there's some kind of a lucrative plan, or that's what the world's clamoring to see, I will show you countless examples of famous people who try to do something else. I could bring you Jim Carrey, the highest guy pay in all of Hollywood, the highest quote. And then he didn't want to be the funny guy making weird faces, doing weird sounds. He wanted to be a straight actor, and that's not what we wanted him for. So now he's out of the business. I could bring you basketball players who decided they were going to be rappers. And that's not what the crowd and the audience wanted to come along the journey for. That wasn't the deal. And the audience didn't break the deal. The performer attempted to break the deal. When The Rock came out and tried to tell the world, you call me Dwayne. Fortunately, and to his credit, he caught on pretty quick. We'll call you what we want to tell you. In the words of yourself, it doesn't matter what your name is, Rock. But it's very important that you understand that. You are not going to take your audience and go over there. That's not the deal. You're breaking the deal. And as soon as you start talking that way, thinking you're going into elite and thin air of McGregor and Francis, you're disclosing what a poor historian and how little you actually know about this business.